Is this one of the few ODI series that the Indian team wants the people to forget?
With whatever is happening between India and Pakistan, it almost seems unlikely for India and Pakistan to play a bilateral series anytime soon. And that is when we realize that there is a whole generation out there that haven't watched India and Pakistan play a bilateral series either in India or in Pakistan, or even in neutral venues for that matter. So this is why we've decided to travel all the way back in time in 2012 when Pakistan came to India to play a bilateral series, a series that was taking place after 5 years, because the last time they played a bilateral series at that point was in 2007. We're talking about the series not only because this was the last bilateral series that India and Pakistan played, but this was an iconic series for many reasons. Yuvraj Singh was making his comeback right after his fight against cancer. There were a lot of interesting debutants that still play to this day, and this was a series that almost broke hearts for a lot of Indian fans heading into the Champions Trophy in 2013. Now, before we talk about the series itself, hit that subscribe button and watch this promo of our membership. Ganguly in that year when he did get dropped was one of the best batters the Indian team had.
And by 2008, Virat had made his debut. 2007, Rohit had made his debut, and Rohit was fitter that time. From that perspective, then again it comes down to the same very argument, which is Sachin and Sehwag. How do you just drop these legends? You can't. So
Yeah, no one's close to Irfan Pathan. He's the only bowler in this time period to get a 5-wicket also. Pathan did everything right.
I wish we had access to like his bowling
Yeah.
speeds and bowling data, which could give a better idea. While this series is mostly remembered for the ODIs that were played, the T20Is were the first things that were played amongst the two nations. And the T20Is were a perfect reflection of what the series was going to pan out like, and it was a perfect representation of what players are going to have the most amount of impact and how the series is going to move forward. All of us remember and have seen clips all over the internet about Bhuvneshwar Kumar's electric debut in the very first T20 International. Coming into bowl after India managed just 133 for the loss of 9 wickets in their 20 overs, all of the pressure was on the Indian side. It was a young Bhuvneshwar Kumar who was going to open the bowling for the Indian side, and he was coming off quite the reputation. Here's a man who at the age of just 19 was able to get Sachin Tendulkar out for a duck in the Ranji Trophy. Something that made enough headlines, and eventually his good performances led to him leading up to this moment. What followed was nothing short of a fairy tale for this man. In the 4 overs that he bowled, he was able to get 3 wickets and give away just 9 runs, bowling 19 dots in one of the most incredible debuts that we've seen for India in international cricket, and especially in the T20 format. And something that immediately caught the attention and eyes of every Indian fan was just the way that Bhuvneshwar Kumar was able to swing the ball. Not just in but also out, and not just a little bit but a consistent amount. It felt like after a long time there was a bowler who was able to bowl with this much control and do so much with the ball in terms of its movement in the air. He had the batters dancing all around, and this was also very evident in the spell that he eventually bowled.
Unfortunately, this was the only positive for the Indian team because we went on to lose against Pakistan by 5 wickets. In fact, India's batting was so bad that the batters from number 3 to number 8 only contributed 30 runs in total. Apart from the openers, no one did their job in this match. But when it came to the second and the final game of the T20 series, the Indian middle order stepped up, especially Yuvraj Singh. Coming back from almost 1.5 years of no cricket, Yuvraj Singh scored 72 of just 36 deliveries, taking Indian team's total to 192 for 5 by the end of 20 overs. Fortunately for the Indian team, they crawled to a victory by 11 runs, but all of these were early signs for what's to come in the ODI series that was to follow. Now here's a little bit of context before the first ODI between India and Pakistan. It was just 2 days later after the second T20I, but this was in Chennai where there were a lot of rains before the day of the match and even before the toss had begun. And because of the rain and overcast conditions, a lot of pundits thought that it was imperative to win the toss and bowl first, and that's exactly what Pakistan had done. But before we get into the match itself, there is something you need to know. There were a couple of rule changes in the ODI format even before the series had started, and this was the first game for the Indian team to play under these rules. Now during this time in an ODI innings, you had 2 blocks of power play. One was between the overs 1 and 10, where there were only 2 fielders allowed outside the 30-yard circle, and there was a second power play which was a block of just 5 overs which the batting team had to take before the 40th over, in which only 3 fielders were allowed outside the 30-yard circle. Not only this, during the non-power play overs, only 4 fielders were allowed. We say only because until that point and before the rule change, 5 fielders were allowed outside the 30-yard circle. And something for the bowlers was the fact that they were allowed to bowl 2 short balls per over.
Because of the conditions at play, it was natural for there to be seam movement, but more importantly, also a lot of swing, especially for the Pakistan new ball bowlers. And they were on the money right away. Right from the get-go, they were swinging the ball, and it was two left-arm quicks in Mohammad Irfan and Junaid Khan who started off things for Pakistan. Contrary to our performance of the openers in the first T20I, this was a completely different picture. India found themselves losing wickets in heaps, to the point that they found themselves at 29 for 5 in just 9.4 overs, and remember that this is an ODI game. Junaid Khan was off to a dream start as he picked up 4 wickets in his very first spell. And this is when MS Dhoni walked in at 29 for 5 at the peak of his powers, facing an uphill battle against the Pakistan fast bowlers. Along with Suresh Raina, MS Dhoni was able to save India's face at least for the time being. The two of them added 73 runs for that wicket and were able to ensure that India at least get past 100. They'd weathered out 22 overs worth of bowling, and they'd ensured that India was at least past that initial phase where the ball was doing a lot. However, unfortunately, this is when at 102, Raina was dismissed and India was now at 102 for 6. Taking things forward, Ravichandran Ashwin was joining Mahendra Singh Dhoni at the crease, and both of them ensured that they batted for the remainder of the innings. With Dhoni, of course, taking the lead role and taking charge and also taking the attack to the opposition, the two of them were able to add 125 runs for that wicket. At the time, this was the highest 7th wicket partnership for India in ODIs, where MS Dhoni took 86 deliveries to get to his half century. From then on, it was an absolute counter-attack. He scored his next 61 runs in just 39 balls, putting the Pakistani bowlers under pressure and ensuring that India are able to make it past 200. This was also a special knock for India's captain Cool, because this was not only his 8th ODI 100 but also his first in a 3-year period. In an innings where India were 29 for 5, where the top 5 batters had added just 18 runs, from there we eventually ended that innings on 229 for 6, losing just 1 wicket in the remainder of the 40 overs. This was one of the worst performances by India's top order, and this was the second lowest total by a top 5 for India in their ODI history. This also happened to be the first time that India's top 4, all of them were dismissed out bowled, with Dhoni eventually ending on 113 not out of 125, and Pakistan, from the initial position they were in, eventually gave away 200 runs for just 1 wicket, would feel that the pressure was on them. And this was also how psychologically the flow was in India's favour when Bhuvneshwar Kumar came out for his ODI debut. Once again, and something that is etched in the memories of a lot of the Indian cricket fans, was that first ball that Bhuvi bowled in his ODI debut to Mohammad Hafiz. A sharp in-swinger and a bit of a brain fade from Mohammad Hafiz ensured that his stump went cartwheeling. This was the perfect start for Bhuvneshwar Kumar. From here on, India were also able to apply a lot of pressure, as in 10.2 overs, Pakistan was 21 for 2. And at that point, it honestly felt like that was India's game to lose. From then on, where India should have ideally been able to close out that game or at least apply a lot more pressure, Pakistan's batters came back attacking. The counter-attack from Nasir Jamshed ensured that they were able to take the game deep and eventually win it quite comfortably. In the process, India tried 7 bowlers only to find no success whatsoever. Nasir Jamshed eventually scored a very well-composed 101 of 132 deliveries, and he was going to prove to be a pain for India in the rest of the series.
India already under the pump after the first ODI. They then fly out to Eden Gardens to play the second ODI against Pakistan, a ground where India has never won an ODI match against them. Because of the time in which these matches were played, the conditions were about the same. It was rainy and overcast, and this time around, MS Dhoni had won the toss and elected to field first. But there was an interesting change in the team where they dropped Rohit Sharma for Ravindra Jadeja. Remember, at that time, Rohit Sharma used to bat lower middle order, and Jadeja was brought in as a specialist bowler. After the toss, there were a lot of pundits criticizing MS Dhoni for this, because in conditions that was suited for fast bowler and wherein you might just need an extra batter because of how the first ODI played out, the captain had dropped a batter for a bowler. Conditions that should have relatively helped the fast bowlers did no such thing, because the Indian fast bowlers did not find any swing and seam, and Nasir Jamshed and Mohammad Hafiz just kept attacking the Indian bowlers. The Pakistani openers had a 141 run stand, which almost took the game away from the Indian team at that point. Interestingly and ironically, Jadeja's inclusion that was being questioned was the reason for these two getting out in the first place. But all was not lost, because this is when India recovered very well. They picked up the next 9 wickets for just 109 runs. In fact, they picked up the last 5 wickets for just 40 runs. After a 141 run stand, Pakistan gets all out for 250. Something to note here is that, like the first game, India again used 7 bowlers. And this is a point we will come back to. The top 5 batters for the Indian team were not not as bad as the first match, but they continued to be abysmal because India found themselves being 70 for 4, where Junaid Khan again took the Delhi boys of Gambhir and Virat Kohli, who were having one of the worst series at that time. MS Dhoni once again walking in at 70 for 4 was the only one who could hold the bat because he finished off the innings being 54 not out, while the rest of the batters only contributed 93 runs in total. MS Dhoni's 54 also showed how bad of a shape the Indian batters were in the series, because at that point this was the slowest ever 50 plus score in an ODI format with a strike rate of 60.6. India ultimately lost the game by 85 runs, and the standout bowlers for Pakistan is no surprise, it was Junaid Khan and Syed Ajmal. Junaid Khan finished the match by taking 3 wickets for just 39 runs, but more impressively, Syed Ajmal took 3 wickets for just 20 runs in his 10 overs. It was after this match that a lot of pundits were calling out MS Dhoni, the captain, because he was being found out because of the new rule changes in the ODI format. Something that Dhoni would always rely on is his bits and pieces player, where a lot of batters could also bowl, but unfortunately because of the amount of fielders allowed outside the circle, which was only 4 outside the circle at that time, these bowlers were not as effective. Not only that, but they were also conceding a lot of runs.
Going into the third ODI, there was still a lot to play for. Pakistan and Australia in the last 10 years were the only teams to win an ODI series versus India in India. But come that third ODI, with Nasir Jamshid in form getting twin centuries and the Pakistan lineup looking absolutely devastating, India still had to ensure that they were not going to get whitewashed. The last time that India was whitewashed in an ODI series was way back in 1983 by the West Indies team, and if India were to replicate that feat, it would be quite the embarrassment for Dhoni the captain and the world champions. The match was to take place in Delhi during the winters, which means that it was extremely cold. At just 3 degrees in the day, and a day that eventually went on to have one of the coldest nights in Delhi's history, this match had chills not only down the players' spines but also just in general throughout the stadium. MS Dhoni won the toss and India elected to bat first. This is also the very first game for Mohammad Shami in the ODI format. As was characteristic up until this point in the series, the top order continued to disappoint. Getting just 63 runs and losing 4 wickets, Junaid Khan and Mohammad Irfan once again were right on the money. Mohammad Irfan was also amongst the wickets, but it was Syed Ajmal's late burst during the middle and late middle overs that eventually broke India's back. With figures of 5 for 24 in just 9.4 overs, Syed Ajmal ensured that India were just never able to get going and picked up wickets at continuous intervals. Once again, the highest run scorer for India was Mahendra Singh Dhoni, holding fort with 36 and ably supported by Suresh Raina and Ravindra Jadeja. But all of these contributions were eventually not enough, as India were all out for just 167, staring at the brink of whitewash. Bhuvaneshwar Kumar set the tone, getting wickets up front, and eventually India were able to keep chipping their way across and get Pakistan at 113 for 4. Still Pakistan's game at this point, but the match was about to turn on its head. At 113 for 4 in the 35th over, Pakistan from there went on to add just 12 runs and suffered a bit of a mini collapse, losing 2 wickets for these 12 runs, but more importantly in 6 overs this time. By the end of 40 overs, Pakistan had slipped to 125 for 6, and suddenly there was hope in the Indian camp and amongst Indian fans. A late burst from Ishant Sharma ensured that he was able to pick up a few wickets towards the end, getting 3 for 36 and breaking Pakistan's back, ensuring that they were all out for 157. While India had lost the series, this was still an iconic victory. It was essential for India to maintain their confidence, and this is something that would help with that. Moving into the Champions Trophy in 2013, it was important for India to at least ensure that they don't get whitewashed in the series, and this is also reflective in the way the team celebrated this sole victory despite losing the series. India's 10-run victory in this match was their third closest by margin of runs versus Pakistan in an ODI. This also at the time happened to be the third lowest aggregate for ODI runs in a single match, 324 runs at that, where both teams had got all out in an ODI in India. And this was only the first time since 1996 where in an India-Pakistan ODI fixture, no batter had crossed 50.
The series was iconic not just for the players, but it continues to be iconic for its stats. Because for India in the ODI format in the 21st century, this was the lowest total runs scored by both the teams combined in an ODI series. This was also the third lowest in terms of runs per over, which was 3.9. But when you come to the individual runs, you'll realize how tough it was for the batters to get going. Because if you look at someone like a Virat Kohli, he's one of the best, if not the best ODI batters this generation has ever seen. This series was the worst ever series for Virat Kohli in his ODI career, averaging just 4.3. Not only that, if you look at the top run scorers, Nasir Jamshid finished off the series by scoring 241 runs, and then you had MS Dhoni with 203 runs. The next batter on the list had just 97 87 runs. And the interesting bit about the number of wickets taken per bowler, not one particular bowler stands out because in each of the games for Pakistan or India, there's always a different bowler who was amongst the wickets. Now this has been our video on India and Pakistan and the last bilateral series that they played. If you've enjoyed this video, like, share and subscribe, but most importantly, comment down below if you have memories from this series or any other India-Pakistan clash that you might have seen. Also subscribe to our membership for more deep dive videos and podcasts that you might enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.